I'd like to introduce our first speaker of the day, Adam Letourneau. So Adam Letourneau QC is an adjunct professor at the Dhillon School of Business at the University of Lethbridge. He's been teaching law, the art of negotiation, business law, employment and labor law, and he's also partner of Letourneau LLP, which is a law firm in Lethbridge. He's the managing partner, and they practice mostly in family employment and business law. After a career in business and technology as an executive, Adam studied law at the U of A and was called to the bar in 2006. In 2015, he was awarded a postgraduate LLM law degree in international dispute resolution at UCL and Queen Mary's University at the University of London. Adam was appointed to Queen's Counsel in 2015. He served as an elected bencher of the Law Society of Alberta in 2011 and from 2014 to 2018. He also has served as the director and chair on a variety of organizations, and he's a chartered arbitrator and chartered mediator. Adam's wife is a graduate student of the U of L Music, and together they're very happy parents and proud parents of 5 lovely children, and he's a proud member of the Métis Nation of Alberta. Adam's talk will be "Life Can Wonderfully Be a Series of Career Changes." So with that said, Adam, the virtual stage is now yours.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that, Tony. I'm grateful for the opportunity that I have to address you today on behalf of the Dhillon School of Business and the University of Lethbridge. I congratulate those of you who have reached this important milestone of being awarded a university degree. This is a meaningful step for you and a doorway to opportunity. I have a bit of a strange resume, at least compared to some. It has been a series of beautiful chance opportunities, some missed opportunities, and some mistakes or regrets. As it moved along, it also included a series of very deliberate, calculated plans and risks, resulting in a rich, meaningful life. I'm now in a place in my life where I gratefully share and serve, still learning and growing. I'm always on the lookout for new opportunities to branch out and to expand my understanding and meaning in this wonderful world. I contend that life can wonderfully be a series of career changes, some big, some small, but all worthwhile. Like many high school graduates, I left with some optimism and at least an inkling of what I wanted my life to look like. I left high school believing that I would be a fantastic high school English teacher. I loved reading and writing. My parents did not have much education though, so I wasn't sure what I was really getting into. I started off strong and then had a lousy experience in first year English. A quick trip to the academic advisor and I became a biology major. I decided that I wanted to be a great high school biology teacher. I really enjoyed learning about the human body, insects, animals, and plants. Then, in my second summer of university, I was in a car accident with a friend's car. The other driver sued me. I tried everything to pay back the $30,000 or so that I ended up owing. I took a night job at McDonald's. I collected cans and bottles. I got a paper route. And I continued to lifeguard, which I had been doing since high school. Then I moved home to my parents' home, and I took a semester off and worked. I got a job as a mail clerk at an engineering firm in Calgary. I worked hard, desperate to pay back my huge debt, and I was promoted to the photocopy room. And then through a stroke of luck and more really hard work, I became the head of document control for the engineering firm. This was really cool, but I had a sense that I wanted to progress more. So before my third year of university, I transferred to the University of Calgary, and the only way that I could benefit from maximum transfer credits was to switch to a Bachelor of Science in Psychology. I enjoyed learning about the human brain and the human mind, but I had never intended to be a psychologist. I thought I could still be a high school biology teacher because it was a science degree. 2 years later, with a degree in hand, what was I supposed to do? I applied to education, but that didn't work out because of some pretty stiff competition. Maybe sports psychology? Nope, grades not high enough. I had supported myself through my undergraduate degree by lifeguarding at swimming pools, something I really enjoyed. So I did that for a while, waiting to see what prospects might come along. So now I had graduated from university. I was a lifeguard and swimming instructor, but I was worried, with few other career prospects, so I thought. After a fairly quick romance and some amazing courting, I fell madly in love with a beautiful woman, a musician named Carmen, and we got married shortly thereafter. I had a family to support, and lifeguarding wasn't going to cut it. I sent out hundreds of resumes, but nothing was happening. Through a friend of a friend, I landed a job as a bank teller, not enough hours. I got a second part-time job as a telephone attendant at the Red Cross, reminding people to come in to donate blood. This was getting tiresome, and I didn't feel that I was reaching my full potential. Soon after, we had a child on the way. Then a year later, another child. I decided it was time to get going. I decided to start really asserting myself. I opened myself to every opportunity that I could find to learn and to grow. I knew that I wanted to be great and successful. I just wasn't sure how to get there. But I knew that I would work really hard to try to find my way. Over the next decade or so, I had an amazing set of experiences, constantly growing and constantly learning. Through some diligent networking and through another personal contact, I was hired to be the director of a company that organized and ran amazing summer camps for children of employees of huge Calgary companies such as Husky Energy and Nortel Networks. The children would come to work with their parent each morning, then get to choose from a number of camps related to their parent's job, then tell their parent all about it on the way home. This was my first real dive deep and learn experience. I learned leadership, organization, logistics, interaction, salesmanship, project design, and so much more. I was like a sponge, learning as much as I could. Through another stroke of luck and a bit of initiative, I became the editor of a parking industry magazine, trade magazine. I also undertook to learn how to do some graphic design and basic HTML programming, and then became director of communications for a new upstart website called liquidationshop.com, where I learned more about starting a business, about procuring contracts, and how to market on the internet. Things were moving so fast in the late 1990s. I branched out and became president of my own website company and professional editing company, learning more skills quickly and looking for more and more opportunities. I then undertook to learn how to edit books and became a book editor. And then I became vice president of editing operations of a book publishing company. I was then recruited to be vice president operations for a tech startup that specialized in digital publications and digital rights management. I worked really hard, working many hours, trying to find knowledge and success and hopefully some happiness. If a great opportunity came my way, I quickly learned how to fill that role and worked hard to be the best at that job. In this last position, I had so many amazing opportunities, traveling to New York to make deals with major publishers, as well as Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble. I worked long hours, but I tried to be there for my beautiful family. Then 9/11 happened. The dot-com bubble burst. The investors closed their wallets. The company that I worked for slowed down and then made plans to close the doors. I had been slowly working on completing an after degree in English by distance learning, simply out of personal interest. My grades had been okay, but not great during my undergrad psychology days. Realizing that my startup job was not going to last, I decided to apply for law school. Here was an unanticipated opportunity. I love startups and business, but I needed better qualifications. I had a friend that was going to law school, and it seemed like a worthy challenge. I had heard that many CEOs had a law degree. I had also worked with a number of lawyers in my business career, and they seemed to do really cool work. After a lot of thinking, prayer, and discussions with my wife, I decided to live with yet more purpose. This was a turning point for me because I had made a more intentional career move for the first time, including planning, preparation, and a long-term vision. I started to study diligently on my way to and from work every day on the bus. I wrote paper after paper and started getting good grades, really good grades. I was motivated by mouths to feed at home. In between studying, I wrote the LSAT. I applied for a variety of law schools, and not long after, I was accepted to 3 law schools, and shortly after that, we packed up and moved to Edmonton for 3 years of law school. Law school was a grind. It was really hard, especially with a small family at home. I had to come up with strategies to compete. There was no way I was going to be able to study as much as my classmates. In my more purpose-driven life, I had now made a commitment to never work or study on Sundays so that my family could have quality time with me. I also tried to be there at least once every day for some great interaction. I learned to study on the bus, at the cafe, during breaks at my part-time job. I learned that practicing writing exams was much more effective than rote studying or reading textbooks. I prayed a lot. It worked out. I was gratefully able to garner a number of offers from a variety of pretty big law firms. In my 3rd year of law school, I decided to write a law school guidebook during breaks from studying. I completed it shortly after graduating law school, and then it was published shortly thereafter. It's called So You Want to Be a Lawyer, eh? Law School in Canada. That book was just released in its 3rd edition and has proven to be quite popular. During my research for that book, I realized that maybe working for a small firm in a smaller community might help me achieve a better work-life balance. So when the recruitment period ended, despite some very tempting offers from some big law firms, I ended up moving our family to Lethbridge to accept an offer at a local law firm. About halfway through my year-long articling position, I came to miss the entrepreneurial life. I wanted more freedom and control over my law practice. Here was another great opportunity to choose the kind of life that I wanted to live. The day after I was called to the bar, I opened up my own law firm. I bought an old Bank of Montreal building in a small nearby town, and I opened up a second office in a hole-in-the-wall office in Lethbridge. I worked hard and worked on whatever came in the door, diligently trying to learn all the things that I did not know. That's the law firm that I still manage and practice law at, Letourneau LLP. We've been in business now for 14 years, and we have 5 excellent lawyers and some amazing staff. I love the practice of law. I love helping people through their difficult disputes. I love interacting with clients and colleagues and judges daily. I love solving problems. I love advocating in court. I love running our business. I have found purpose, but my journey is not over, not by a long shot. Along the way, in my legal career, I have changed paths within my chosen career a number of times, purposefully and wonderfully. I started out doing a lot of real estate and estate planning. Then I got very involved in representing claimants in the Indian Residential School class action lawsuit against the Government of Canada. I ran hundreds of hearings and was very passionate about advocating for my clients. To date, this has been some of my most meaningful work. I then became fascinated by family law and still practice extensively in that area. I try my best to help my clients through their most difficult periods, helping them to gain dignity and hope along the way. I still have so much to learn, and I really enjoy the challenge that comes with the myriad problems related to families and their disputes. I then became very enamored by mediation and arbitration and alternative dispute mechanisms, and found that I have a talent for helping people to resolve their difficult disputes. I decided to become more educated in this field and was accepted to the University of London in England to do a postgraduate law degree specializing in international dispute resolution. Looking for an opportunity to learn and grow further, I ran for and I was elected as a bencher, or what we call a governor of the Law Society of Alberta. This was another choice opportunity to learn about leadership, strategic planning, and regulation of a profession. Throughout my legal career, I have always purposefully taken significant time to volunteer, usually as a director of a board or some kind or another. This has led to many meaningful experiences as well. Along the way, through a series of interesting interactions a little more than 4 years ago, I became involved with the Faculty of Management at the University of Lethbridge, teaching a course on negotiation. I have loved this experience over the last 4 years, and am now an Adjunct Associate Professor at the Dhillon School of Business, teaching a variety of law-related classes. I teach 2 classes each semester, and I gladly work this into my other work life. I love engaging interaction that I have with the students. I love to get people thinking differently than they have ever thought before. Alvin Toffler, an American writer and one of the world's most renowned futurists, said in a book called Future Shock, which was published in 1970, that, quote, "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn," unquote. I have learned, unlearned, and relearned many times in my career to date. I embrace this idea, and I want to encourage you to embrace this idea as well, to never stop learning, to unlearn those things that are not helping you to make a difference, and to relearn those things that do make a difference. I've taken some risks over the years. As time went along, those risks became more calculated and more purposeful. I have embraced change, and I have embraced opportunity. I will share with you a last few thoughts about my wonderful series of career changes. Number 1, over time, I came to realize that I drew meaning from work that made a difference and that helped people. Money was really secondary, although it seemed to follow my efforts. I was drawn to opportunities that impacted people positively. This guiding principle has brought me a deep sense of happiness. Number 2, it's nice if you can have mentors. Seek out good ones. I've had a few myself, but really not many. More often, it was just me taking on the world before me, and I did make mistakes, and I had to make mistakes and learn them on my own. And learn on my own, and carve my own path. Such adversity opens the door for innovation. No experience is wasted if you learn something from it. Each twist and turn and opportunity in my career so far has helped me in the next stages of my life. It is important to reflect on the things that you have learned and to apply them regularly. I use a commonplace book daily, and this is a great tool to look back, to learn from my mistakes, and to make plans for other great adventures. And last, number 3, each day is an adventure, and we grow line upon line, precept upon precept, experience upon experience. Career changes or alterations to our jobs and positions can be pivotal and very important. Life can wonderfully be a series of career changes. I had a colleague about a decade ago say that perhaps I should just settle down and focus on one thing. I kind of rebelliously balked then. Perhaps that extreme focus is good for some, but I have loved the myriad of challenges, pitfalls, disappointments, and successes that I have enjoyed along my path so far. Some research indicates that people generally change careers once every 5 or 10 years. I believe that. I love change. I love adapting. I love growing and progressing. And I love giving back. I often joke with my 5 children about what I hope to be when I grow up. I don't think that I'm done with career changes yet. I figure I have another 30 to 40 years of career work left in me. That's theoretically another possible 6 to 8 career changes or mini career changes. Isn't that exciting? Isn't that wonderful? I hope with the deepest sincerity that you might have a rich career or series of careers. Keep your minds open, keep your hearts open, embrace change, embrace challenges. Good luck, and again, congratulations on your present achievements. This is a big deal and a big step in your life, but it is just one of many, I hope. Blessings to all of you, and thank you for this opportunity again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam, for that speech. I have to admit, you started the day off with a bang, I think. I was trying to think of how I'd talk after these things, after hearing all this great advice. I'm well into my career too, and I've gone through several changes. And, the thing I like most about your story, and I hear this a lot from our colleagues at the university, is we all, for some way or another, wanted to be really good teachers when we started and ended up in the end being teachers, even though it's not high school teachers. So I thought that was just an amazing story. The teacher, I think, comes out of you in the fact you do that daily reflection every day. That's something that the ed faculty hammers home, is reflection, reflection, reflection. I also love the learn, unlearn, relearn thing. That's something I wrote down and I'm going to use myself a lot. So with that in mind, thank you. It was exceptional. And I think we should open up the floor to anybody who has any questions. So like I said earlier, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens and start with your first and last name, and I'll pass the question along to Adam. Okay, well, if people don't have any questions yet, I'll give you a few minutes to think of some, and I'll fill it with some of my own questions then. So, you know, for me, the hardest thing I find to balance in my own life, because I really am passionate about volunteering as well, is, you know, finding that balance. And you mentioned a lot about finding that balance through your law school days. So how do you now, moving forward in your day-to-day career, choose your volunteer opportunities and how to balance those things?
That's a good question. Over time, family has become the priority. And so whenever I'm making a choice, if somebody's asking me to take on a volunteer position or to take on a project, I always ask myself the question, how is this going to impact my wife and my children? So if it's going to take time away from them, I'm very reluctant to do that. But if it's something that I can work in to the other projects that I'm always working on, that's usually my first priority. And then my second priority is whether or not something else can be deleted from my life in order to take on this new project. So I'm very careful with my time. I mentioned that I keep a commonplace book. So I use that to analyze things. You know, even choosing to move to Lethbridge was a bit of an analysis. And perhaps that's something that I learned at law school, I'm not sure. Or maybe it's just something that I learned along the way. So there always has to be a give and a take.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. Now some questions are pouring in. So Holly Kletke asks, you know, what was the most challenging part of law school for you?
That's a great question. I think probably the hardest thing is that everybody in law school is an A student for the most part. They've all had great success in their undergraduate degrees. They also tend to be what I would call type A personalities, right? So everybody is a high achiever. It's an incredibly competitive environment, and sometimes that can create a lot of negativity. So one thing that I did to avoid that was actually to stay off of campus more often. So I went to class and I interacted a lot with other students, but I didn't hang around the law school for hours and hours on end like some of my colleagues did. And I found that helped me to keep that balance. But that was probably the most difficult thing, is realizing that I was very average when I went to law school.
Yeah. Brian Kolb asks, he didn't hear you mention any regrets. And do you have any regrets throughout this journey you just shared with us?
I do. I have a number of regrets. One of them that I've had to learn over time is how important my family is. So in the first, I guess, half of my career in business, I mentioned that I worked really hard and I worked a lot of hours. I would work 60 to 80 hours most weeks. And after I went through the law school experience, which also took up an inordinate amount of time, I made a very deliberate decision that I was going to work a pretty normal 40-hour work week. And so since I started my law firm, I've kept to the commitment that I never work weekends, for example. I still have times where the time pressure is so heavy and I can't be with my family, but I always try to make up for it. The other regrets, I suppose, that I have is that I never went to medical school. That's still in the back of my mind, a dream that I have. Whether that ever happens, I don't know. I've actually had two colleagues that switched from law to medicine or medicine to law later in their careers, and it's been very meaningful to them. So you never know. My wife probably wouldn't like it very much if I went and applied for medical school at this point in my career, but you never know.
Jason Wagner asks, what is one of the most important things that you've had to unlearn throughout your career?
I'll have to think about that one. That's a really good question. I think for myself, like I said in my previous answer, I tend to be one of those type A personalities. And I have taken on a lot more than I should have at various times in my career. And so that's been something I've had to unlearn in terms of keeping track of my time and my energy, and becoming a bit of an energy czar, so that I make sure that I have enough energy at the end of the day. I'm also learning, I'm 46 today, and I don't have the same energy that I had when I was 25 or 30. So I have to be a little bit more careful. And I still feel like I'm invincible many days, but then at the end of the week, I realize I'm not. So I'm not sure if I answered that one very well, but that's something that came to mind.
I'm sure the energy thing might have something to do with 5 kids at home too, that you also are balancing through that busy life. That's a lot of work too. I just have 1, and I don't know how you can stay that involved and have 5. That's crazy. Good on you. So we also have a couple of questions about skills. So I'm going to try to wrap these into sort of one question. One anonymous person asked what the most important skill that you have learned or stayed flexible throughout your mindset or career. And another person asked what was the most important certain skill that you learned throughout your entire career, like most importantly that you learned in your undergrad career.
Okay, let me just think about that one for a moment. I think probably, and it goes along with the theme of the other answers that I gave, an important skill is to be able to say no, and to do that without feeling guilty. I found that to be very difficult, especially in my business career. Anytime somebody asked me to do something, I would jump at the opportunity, and I overran myself. These days, I get asked to do a lot of things in my various career aspects, whether that's at the university or in my law practice, or volunteer things as well. Sometimes I'm asked to be on boards of directors, or to do other service projects. And to be able to respectfully say no, and to not feel guilty about that. I would love to take on every single opportunity that comes before me that's interesting, but we do have a finite amount of energy and time. So that's one skill I think that I've learned. And I think I've avoided a lot of regrets by learning to be able to say no.
Yeah. We're at the 10:30 mark, but because I took a few minutes at the beginning from your time, I think I'm going to take one more question before we move to the next one.
Sure.
So David Peachman asks if you've ever had any trouble with procrastination and how you've handled that throughout your career.
That's a really good question. I think early in my career I did. I would often get fines for not filing my taxes, for example, because I didn't do them on time. But one thing that has really, really helped me is keeping that commonplace book. So every Sunday evening, I pull out my commonplace book and I make a plan for the week. And for example, how many times do I want to work out? How many times do I want to have an interaction with one of my children? Who I want to meet? What kinds of things I want to achieve? And that has helped me immensely. And then the following Sunday, I always do a reflection back to find out how I did. That might be part of my type A personality, but I've taught that to my children, and my wife does that quite often as well. And I think over time, I've been able to avoid those procrastination, bugs that get into your mind. Thank you for those great questions.
Yeah, and there were a couple that we didn't have time to get to. So just to remind everyone, we will share these again afterwards with Adam. And do feel free, if we didn't get to your question, to reach out directly to Adam by email, probably, right, Adam? And he can answer these questions for you. So with that being said, thank you again, Adam, for that excellent enlightening presentation and advice and story.